What's up, Packer fans? Happy Friday. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. What better way to kick off a long weekend than with doing a deep dive into Packers fifth-round pick, Shemar Jean-Charles. Really excited to finally jump into his tape and kind of go over my findings with you and kind of my main observations. You can find the article later today on PackerReport.com if you want a little bit of a longer version, so make sure to check out that as well. But I'll be giving you my 12 observations as I have done with all the remaining draft picks, or all the previous draft picks, I should say. Still have 3 more to get to, which will come, and I know we're getting further and further out from the draft actually taking place, but these deep dives do take time, and I want to make sure that I'm giving my best effort and energy into each of these players. I'm really diving into the tape and going over my observations in great detail. So very excited to do that today with Shemar Jean-Charles. So without further ado, here are my 12 observations. And of course, if you want to go back and check out the other ones, all of the links to those other players are listed below. So you can go out and check each of the Packers' previous 5 picks from this draft that I've already done deep dives on if you want to do that already. But all right, let's jump in. Here we go. Observation number 1 is scheme fit. And I personally believe that Shemar Jean-Charles is a perfect fit for a zone defense. I thought he was much better in zone than he was in man. He has natural zone instincts. He has the ability to kind of bait quarterbacks, come off one wide receiver, stay in his zone, and kind of jump passes intended for other receivers. And you can just see that he has that natural, innate ability to kind of keep his eyes on the quarterback, again, kind of bait quarterbacks. And he does a really nice job with route recognition as well. Definitely seems like somebody who spends time watching tape, kind of picking up on tendencies from wide receivers. And what that allows him to do is kind of develop knowledge for potential routes that are taking place on any given play, what their tendencies are, and again, then to use those natural instincts and that natural zone ability to make plays on the football. And we're going to get to some of the stats that he had this season in just a moment, but his incredible ability to break up passes and make breaks on the football were in large part due to that ability to, again, recognize routes, play with great instincts, play well in zone, and again, make plays on the football. So number 1A that stood out on tape for me is Shemar Jean-Charles was his ability to play high-end zone defense. And again, going into a Joe Barry defense, we're expecting a lot more zone defense, and I expect him to be a very good scheme fit if and when he actually gets on the field in this Joe Barry system. On the opposite side, definitely something that I think he can work on or that he's going to struggle with is just his overall speed, foot quickness, and change of direction. You look at some of the testing that Shemar Jean-Charles had was not a fluid tester in the change of direction drills, the 3-cone, the short shuttle, things like that. Tested okay in the 40, but if you look at his 20 and 10-yard splits, very slow and below average for cornerbacks in general, much less a player that's 5'10", 180 on the shorter side, on the lighter side. Did okay in the broad jump, in the vertical, overall, but definitely was not a high-end tester. And those traits, more importantly, showed up on tape. I thought his change of direction was very poor. You watched him against route runners that could get in and out of their breaks. He struggled to stay with them. You look against receivers who had long speed. He struggled to stay with them. And I'm not talking Devontae Smith and some high-end Alabama wide receivers here. I'm talking about receivers at University of Louisiana Lafayette and Louisiana Monroe and schools like that, Charlotte, etc., Marshall. Like receivers at those schools who are just running past him, getting free releases off the line of scrimmage, cutting in and out of the breaks. And when you look at the overall just kind of athleticism for Shemar Jean-Charles, and this is really the next one here as well, is just kind of his size and play strength. He doesn't have an advantage anywhere. He's on the shorter side. He's on the lighter side. He's not on the fastest side. There's going to be receivers who outrun him. He's not the quickest. He doesn't have the greatest change of direction. No matter what wide receiver he's going against, they're going to have some ability to either out physical him, to run past him, to out quick him, to change directions better than him. And ultimately, he's kind of constantly playing behind the 8 ball because he just doesn't have those high-end traits. Now, what he does have is high-end leadership, communication, and just kind of will to do well. And this is a very Packers type pick. Ted Thompson always called these Packer people. Brian Gutekunst has been very much on the same page with picking players who have the intangibles, who are players that live and breathe football, who all they want to do is get better at football. And Shemar Jean-Charles, I think, exudes that as well. He was a team captain this past year, and you constantly saw him communicating with teammates, leading by example, making sure that they were all lined up in the right spot. Again, recognizing what opposing offenses were trying to do. Just an overall strong, kind of mental mind, intangibles, wants to be great, all of those sort of things, which I think when you're looking at players who will get better in the NFL, you're looking for those type of players. And that's something that Brian Gutekunst has consistently looked at over the course of the last 4 drafts that he's been a part of, is finding those players who really care about the game, again, who live and breathe the game, want to get better, and are going to do everything in their power to be great in the NFL. I think Shemar Jean-Charles fits that mold as well. Another thing that he can work on is just his hand usage. He actually tested really well with his play strength, or just his overall strength at the combine. He was in like the 93rd percentile for bench reps for any cornerbacks, much less a 5'10", 180 guy. So even though he's on the smaller side, he has great play strength. I didn't always see that show up on tape. I don't necessarily think that he's the most, biggest impact type of player. I don't necessarily know that he's making any massive hits, but he's definitely a little bit more scrappy. I'm getting off topic here. When it comes to his hand usage, though, he has the strength to jar wide receivers, but what happens is his hand placement is all over the place, and far too often you see him just get beat off the line of scrimmage clean, and then again, you go back to those traits. He doesn't have just the quick twitch speed to just flip his hips and run and recover. So he has to be better at the line of scrimmage, has to be better with his technique, because again, he doesn't have the high-end physical traits. So that's definitely something that he's going to have to work on in the NFL. Now, going back to the plus side, this is a player who had 17 breakups in 2020 alone. He plays with great confidence at the catch point, breaks up a ton of passes, averaged over a pass breakup per game over the course of the last 2 years. Just incredible ball production when it comes to pass breakups. And again, that happens because you're confident at the point of attack. That happens because you play aggressive, and that mentality overall serves him well. Now, he will get some penalties alongside of that. And when you're a physical corner that's playing through the catch point, that's going to happen from time to time. That's just kind of the cost of doing business at the position. But overall, that athleticism serves him better than not. And again, the ability to come up with 17 pass breakups in one season is really incredible. It's worth noting that some of that was due to poor quarterback play at smaller schools. There were times where he was beat, the ball got thrown behind the receiver, and he was able to, break it up. Counts as a pass breakup. In reality, he was beat. There's a couple of those that showed up on tape, but take nothing away. 17 pass breakups is incredible, and that's something that really showed up on tape as well. On the flip side, not great overall ball skills or playmaking. So 17 pass breakups is great, and he got his hands on a ton of footballs throughout the course of his career. Only 2 interceptions during his time at Appalachian State. Only 2 forced fumbles, 0 sacks, no other big plays. So if you're looking for somebody who's going to have those innate ball skills to be able to, get to the spot, make a play on the ball, pick sixes, things like that, that was not Shemar Jean-Charles in college. Again, it's not to say he can't become that, but that's not something that he showed on tape during his time in college, which is weird because, again, he had the ability to jump routes, get his hands on the football, but just wasn't able to make some of those bigger plays. Now, a part of that is because he's not always getting his head around and making a play on the football. He's more playing through the wide receiver, breaking up the pass at the point of attack, which again can lead to some of those penalties. So it's definitely, again, something that he can work on, but we didn't see that ball production and that playmaking ability during his time at App State. As far as run defense and tackling, I was kind of getting on a little bit of a tangent on this earlier when I was going over hand usage and play strength. He's scrappy, and he more often than not will get his player to the ground. Missed very few tackles over the course of this past season, but I don't see him play with great play strength. He's not somebody that's going to set a physical edge, which if you want him playing in that star position, that's something that you generally need. So he's going to have to put on functional strength. The question there, if he puts on strength and weight, how much more foot speed can he potentially lose? He already doesn't have great change of direction and great long speed. Will that affect him? Just what type of size can he put on? So I think there's some question there. Wasn't used as a blitzer. Doesn't necessarily mean he can't do it, but I don't necessarily see him running through running backs. Again, he gets by and he gets off of blocks okay, makes tackles, but he's not an impact tackler or an impact run defender. I mentioned all the positive traits in zone coverage. on the flip side, very much struggles in man-to-man. And again, all those things that we mentioned earlier, the foot speed, the quickness, the long speed, the strength, the size, all of it, he's just outmatched in pure man-to-man coverage. Too many players running past him, just, stride for stride. Too many players just getting in and out of their breaks that he doesn't have the ability to change directions with. So granted, again, what's important here is that Green Bay's playing a ton of zone, and he's a zone corner. That's what you want. But there are times where you have to play man-to-man defense, and if he gets in those situations, especially against higher level players in the NFL, right now he's going to struggle. Now, he has time to develop. He's likely going to be a special teams player to begin with. He's not going to be on the field right away, and he has time to learn those skills. So it's not like he's, going to get on the field all of a sudden. He's going to be covering, the Julio Joneses and whomever else you want to put in that, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, whatever, right away. He has some time to develop those man-to-man coverage skills, but right now, definitely something that needs to get improved upon. I think where he's really going to look to make his mark, and where I think he can make his mark right away, is on special teams. And he wasn't a core special teams player at App State, but he did have over 300 snaps in special teams over the course of his career at App State. And the nice thing is it was diversified. So he was on almost every special team unit at some point. The coverage teams, both on kick and punt coverage, kick return, punt return team, field goal block. He was on just about everything. So I would very much expect, and more importantly, he has the mentality to be a core special teams player. Again, team captain at App State. I think he's going to be one of those players that's, takes it very seriously, that rallies everyone around it. And for a special teams unit that is as poor as Green Bay's has been, adding an influx of players like a Shemar Jean-Charles to that unit, I think could pay dividends. So look for Shemar Jean-Charles to make his impact first on special teams and then look to grow from there. Next up is just limited upside. And again, this all goes kind of back to what we've mentioned so far. I'm not saying that Shemar Jean-Charles can't be good or even great or even elite. There are players with worse, testing skills and overall traits than Shemar Jean-Charles that have gone on to have amazing careers in the NFL. But it makes it much tougher, right? He's going to have to master his technique. He's going to have to be a film room junkie to understand what everyone's doing. And he's just going to have to be perfect in every other phase just because he doesn't have those high-end traits. He's not the most twitched up dude in the world. He doesn't have great size, doesn't have great speed. Again, those are all okay. And in his own coverage scheme and with what he does well and how instinctual he is, he can make up for some of that. And again, he can still be a good player, but it just makes him reaching that ceiling or reaching a high ceiling that much more difficult. And then last but not least, after all I've told you here, you might start getting the impression, all right, well, Shemar Jean-Charles just wasn't that good of a football player. He lacks the speed, struggles in man coverage, doesn't have the play strength, not very tall, like all of it, right? Obviously, he didn't play that well. That's completely not the case. In fact, in 2020, his peripherals were incredible. He had 17 pass breakups, as I mentioned, only allowed 17 completions on 52 targets, allowed only 2 touchdowns, had the interception, only 4 penalties called against him, allowed an NFL rating of 50.0, a 50.0 passer rating, I should say, which is really, really good. And PFF graded him as an 80-plus player in both run defense, coverage, and overall defense. So, I mean, he put together a really nice season, and he's just one of those players that found a way to get the job done. Wasn't always the fastest, wasn't always the quickest, wasn't always the strongest, but when push came to shove, he broke up 17 passes, barely allowed completions, didn't allow big plays, only 2 touchdowns, and put together a hell of a season. So is he a very good player? Yeah, he was a really good player. The big question that remains is how is that going to translate with the lack of top-end traits to the NFL level? I think he's going to come in and be a really sound special teams player. It wouldn't surprise me if he was on almost every phase of special teams from day one. I think he can make that kind of impact. And the type of player and battler and grinder that he is, I see him as a player that I expect to get better and better and better as his career goes on because this game means so much to him and you can just see that out on the field. So I think his best days are hopefully ahead of him. I think he definitely has some areas where he needs to improve upon. I think there's some areas where he just doesn't have the raw natural gifts and strength. But I think he, again, can still put everything together and have a really nice career in the NFL. Certainly not a bad 5th-round pick. Definitely lacking in some upside. But if he becomes a core special teams player, you can get your ROI on that just on that alone. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what he becomes. Definitely think that he has some potential and possibilities. But only time is going to tell. Thanks so much for joining me today for this deep dive. If you haven't checked out all the other ones, again, they'll be linked for you below. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure to do so. And also make sure to check out Andrew and Kyle on today's audio version of the Pack a Day podcast as well. It's going to do it for me. Thanks as always for listening. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.